There was a one of the last times I was in Iraq. On the way out, I met another American. So you usually talk to him and say, hey, where are you at and stuff. And he's like, yeah, he's a drone pilot. I was like, really? He wouldn't tell me which base he was off of because
Sure.
Americans are pretty low key there. I said, what do you do, reconnaissance or lethal? And he said, oh, lethal. I mean, he's the dude taking the shots. Well, actually, he was in charge of the drone team, so he was making the calls, who gets
Mm.
killed, basically.
Wow.
And so I just kind of asked him, I was like, well, yeah, tell me about that. And he said, yeah, we've been here for years, blowing up bad guys all the time. And he said, doesn't matter what we do, there's always more bad guys to blow up. And he said, yeah, he said one time there was this terrorist commander, an ISIS guy in, I think it was Mosul, you know, and he said they'd been watching and watching. They're not allowed to have collateral damage. And he would always take his son with him because he knew the Americans wouldn't kill him otherwise. The one time his son left the car to go open a gate, and they said, that was a perfect shot. So they took the shot, they killed him. And he said his son survived, which was good. And he said, but guess what? It didn't do any good because he said, I know that boy is going to grow up and be the next commander that we need to kill.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, it won't help. So I asked him, does it feel like you're trying to put out a fire with gasoline? He said, absolutely. So I said, well, why are you still doing this job? He said, honestly, it's just my orders, and that's what we're here to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. And it
Mm.
was almost depressing. Like you could tell he
Oh.
was almost just
Mm-hmm.
so disillusioned and depressed with the whole thing. And he knew, like he basically said, yeah, you can't bomb an idea out of existence. It's just not going to
Yeah.
work.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like the early church father who said
Yeah.
that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And you could almost say that the blood of radical Muslims is the seed of terrorism. It
Yeah.
almost seems like it's
Yeah.
a principle that applies, to
Yeah.
different ideologies in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Mm.
what I was thinking about. How we often talk about how the more persecuted the church is, the more it grows, um, and I think there is something to that. That I think when people see martyrdom, that it inspires them, and it makes them wonder like what's going on here, and so then they meet Jesus or whatever. But I think it's maybe a little bit of just that whole thing of you can't bomb an ideology out of existence, because the same thing happens with on the other side of the coin, with terrorism, with they see when other yeah when other Muslims or whoever see that people are dying for a cause, that inspires them, and they want to
Yeah.
be a part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The way I have it summed up here in my notes is basically terrorism is about an ideal, an ambiguous enemy that threatens the values a particular group's believes is paramount. This is how terrorists are able to recruit so many believers to their agenda. Terrorism is a strangely bonding experience, a community of, quote, holy warriors heroically defending all they know and care about against a vastly more powerful, evil enemy. That's their point of view, and they're willing to die for that. And if someone dies in that cause, you've just created a martyr. And now
Wow.
his son is going to step up, or his brother, or his neighbor,
Yeah.
and it will go on forever. And that's what we saw in Syria. It just spiraled out of control.
Hmm.
It started with protests, and I think when I was there or at the border, they wouldn't let me through. In 2016, they said there was over 1,500 militias fighting it out in there. 1,500, like how
1,500.
1,500 militias, and each one had anywhere from maybe a small unit of guys to tens
Sure.
of thousands of fighters. One guy would die, and then another guy would take his place. So, I think going back to what do we actually say is the cure? I strongly feel violence is not the answer. I mean, obviously,
Hmm.
Jesus talks about that, and I think Jesus is right. He tends to be so. you know,
Usually is.
yeah, he usually is. He is God after all. I think the battle is lost though in the next generation, in the children. And if you're brainwashed into that, and that's what you believe that you are a victim and you need to fight to stay alive, um, that's enormously motivating.
Yeah.
If you feel that you're defending your family or your faith, um,
Are you
and
saying? Are you saying that generally the battle is lost in the children, or that specifically this generation of children, the battle is lost?
I think in general,
Yeah.
actually, because you grow up with that mindset, and when you're older, 18 or whatever, you want something to live for, so that's something that's worth committing to. Some guy in Afghanistan, I'm not sure how accurate this quote is, but some warlord told an American soldier at one point, he said, "You wonder why we're so willing to die, but it's because you fail to realize we have nothing to live for."
Mhm.
Mm.
Wow.
You go over there, there's
Yeah.
nothing there. I mean, everything's bombed into oblivion. Um, there, it's desert. There's very little to live for. So of course you're going to take up a mantle of a holy warrior because it gives your
Yeah.
life a purpose.
Yeah.
So going back to the cure, it's changing the ideology and giving them something that's actually worth living for, because they don't have that right now.
When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother.